Good afternoon, and welcome to Remembering Luchita, which is the final installment of our Sundays with Luchita series of programs celebrating the life and work of Luchita Hurtado. My name is Gwendolyn Fernandez. I'm the Curator of Education and Public Programs here at the Harwood, and we are just delighted to host this fantastic panel this afternoon. Our curator, Nicole Dial-Kay, will introduce the exhibition at the center of this collaboration and today's panelists in more detail in just a minute. But first, I want to say this exhibition, Luchita Hurtado, Earth and Sky Interjected, it brings together work made during or inspired by Luchita's part-time residency in the village of Arroyo Seco. The beauty of this valley deeply moved her. So it is only fitting that we begin with an acknowledgement that we are on the historic homeland of the Red Willow people within the original territory of Taos Pueblo. As a sign of our humble respect, we recognize the unique and enduring relationship that exists between indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. May this acknowledgement and this exhibition serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to respectfully recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Red Willow people whose land and water we benefit from in this great valley today. So I hope that you will be able to spend more time in the exhibition if you have not already following today's program. If you are one of our audiences listening on the radio or watching our live feed, you have until February 23rd to get yourself to the Harwood to see this magnificent show. As a reminder, Sundays are always free at the Harwood to Taos County residents, and we will have special Luchita-inspired programming at our February 1st Friday, which has extended hours, and this will include the return of Luchita's Sewing Station with artist Price Valentine. And that program will take place on Friday, February 7th from 4 to 7 p.m. So before I hand things over to Nicole and the panel, I want to say just a few more thank yous. First, to Hauser and Worth and the estate of Luchita Hurtado, who have been so supportive of this show and the corresponding program. We're deeply grateful for their partnership for this exhibition. Major support for this exhibition and today's program is provided by the National Endowment for the Arts. Additional support for the exhibition is provided by 203 Fine Art, Anonymous, Livy and Sherry Hanks, excuse me, that's got to be Sherry Livney and Steve Hanks, Charles Hill, Kay and Thomas Tynan, Aaron Payne Fine Art, Debbie Vincent and Chocola, Dora and Carl Dillstone, Ms. Borenstein, Happy Price, Barbara Zaring, Laurie Medley, and Randall Johnson, and Romy and Carl Colonius. Thank you all. Today's program is also a product of a very special collaboration, and I want to thank the Taos Abstract Artist Collective and the Millicent Rogers Museum for going on this journey together. We started having conversations with TAAC over 2 years ago, thinking about ways to bring their collective of artists and Luchita and the beautiful collective of artists that she worked with together, and the goal of really connecting her creative life within the contemporary resurgence of creative collectives represented by TAAC. And I'm really grateful that they tapped the Millicent Rogers Museum and Claire Motzinger to co-create their response show, Channeling Luchita, which features 10 New Mexico artists with beautiful statements on the threads that connect their work to the work of Luchita's. If you haven't seen that show, it is at the Millicent Rogers Museum. You have a little less time to get there. It closes on February 2nd. This is the first time that we've collaborated all together on a project like this, and I hope that it is not our last. So without further ado, let me welcome Curator of Collections and Exhibitions, Nicole Dial-Kay, who's going to introduce the rest of our conversation.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you all for joining us for this special panel discussion celebrating the life and the work of Luchita Hurtado. A special thank you again to Taos Abstract Artist Collective and Millicent Rogers, and also to Cole Root from the Hurtado Mulligan Estate, who traveled here from Los Angeles for this talk and has been just an incredible supporter of this exhibition. We are honored today to have some really special panelists, including Hank Saxe, Cynthia Patterson, Happy Price, and Ron Cooper. All of our panelists are a really important part of our vibrant art community here in Taos, and all artists in their own right. And each of them knew Luchita for several decades and have some really beautiful memories to share. I actually interviewed all of them and some of the other artists in the community prior to putting the exhibition together, and it was a really critical element in understanding who Luchita was, what this community meant to her, and what she meant to this community. So I'm grateful that today we'll be able to share some of those stories. A little bit about Luchita, if you haven't heard of her before we start. Luchita was born in Maiquetía, Venezuela in 1920. She immigrated to New York in 1928 and studied at the Art Students League. Over her life, she lived in artistic hubs like Mexico City, the San Francisco Bay Area, and Santa Monica, eventually building a home in Arroyo Seco, New Mexico with her husband, Lee Mulligan. Beginning in the 70s, Taos became a central inspiration for her work, reflected in intimate pieces, capturing the natural beauty and spiritual energy of the area. Despite her profound talent, she was largely unknown as an artist for most of her life. At the age of 98, she gained international recognition, receiving the Carolyn Clark Powers Lifetime Achievement Award, being named one of Time 100's most influential individuals, and debuting her first major solo exhibition, I Live, I Die, I Will Be Reborn, which was curated by superstar curator Hans Ulrich Obrist and traveled to LACMA, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. Luchita Hurtado, Earth and Sky Interjected, our exhibition, is her second museum show and the first to focus on her connection to New Mexico. It celebrates her artistic contributions, her relationships with this region, and her rightful place in the art history of Taos. It also ensures that her legacy is written within the community that inspired her. Today, we'll hear from those who knew her best, sharing personal stories and reflections that deepen our understanding of Luchita's life, work, and impact. So with that, let's begin. I'm going to ask a series of questions, and then we'll open up to questions and answers from y'all. So please hold your questions till near the end, and we'll make sure everybody has time. So panelists, thank you again for joining me. My first question is, can you share your first memory of Luchita? What struck you most about her personality and presence? Want to start, Cynthia?
Okay, I'll jump in. When Nicole asked this question the other day, I said, well, my first recollection of Luchita was not knowing her, but knowing the house that she and Lee were building in Arroyo Seco in the early 70s, I believe it was. I lived in what was known as Dogtown, which some of you may know what that means. It's this side of Arroyo Seco. And from where I lived, you could see this house being built out in a field, pretty much standing alone by itself. And parked next to it was a box truck that said Laura Scudder Potato Chips. And that was there for years, I think. Anyway, come the 90s, we meet Lee and Luchita, and we go to their house, and Hank and I are like, this is the house. This is the house with the Laura Scudder's potato chip truck. So that memory sticks with me. But then, you know, actually meeting Luchita, getting to know her, being in her presence, is just something you can't forget. I mean, everyone that you talk to that knew her, remembers her, knows that you just can't forget her. She had an elegance that was understated. It wasn't from designer clothes and gems and those kinds of things. It was an understated, simple elegance that was all her own. She had a particular style of dress, and the jewelry she wore, her hair was always pulled back, it was very long. Wore sensible shoes all the time. I never saw anything that wasn't sensible on her feet. So that was where I'll start.
Yes, I met Luchita in the early 70s. I think they were building their house, and our kids were very small. We had come from Santa Monica in the Venice area, and everybody knew Luchita, but I'd never met her. And I called her, and she invited me over, and she was standing at the front door, and Luchita radiated. She had this aura around her, and you always kind of felt that maybe she was half in this world and half in another world, because her mind was just, you could feel her mind just working, and she loved beautiful things. She made all her clothes, and she strung a lot of her necklaces, and she always looked beautiful, and she always had this radiant smile and this wonderful laugh. And I hung out with her just about as much as I could, because I learned over all these 50-some years that she had taught me so much inadvertently. I didn't think about it at the time while we were together, but in retrospect, when I've been thinking about her a lot because of all that's going on, I realize how much she's taught me, how much she taught me to see better, to hear better, to enjoy more, and a deep love of nature. And so we spent most of our times walking on trails, drawing, stopping in little sketchbooks. And in LA, we continued our friendship. We went to all the gardens, and we went to all these trips. So basically, she was my nature friend. Oh, you have your own.
Well, I'm going to pull Luchita. I'm 82, so I don't remember very much. But Sandra and I had great dinners that she prepared that were just wonderful, and she was so vivacious. She was a really amazing person. There's a story that I can tell that we had invited Lee and Luchita out for dinner around 96, I think. And they were to come over to our house and meet, and then we were going to go to dinner. Sandra's son had a friend from Philadelphia that showed up with a girlfriend, and they decided to get married. They asked if we could find someone to marry them, and they needed witnesses. So
They wanted to get married that night?
that night, immediately, yes. So there was a big, tall hippie that wore a giant sombrero back in those days named Peter McIntosh. And somehow we got a hold of him, and he agreed to marry this couple. And Lee and Luchita showed up and agreed to be witnesses to make the whole thing legal. And they were photographed with this newly wedded couple, and the photographs went back east to assure the family that everything was on the up and up. And then we all proceeded, 3 couples proceeded to dinner and celebrated.
Hank, do you want to share some of your first impressions of Luchita?
Well, it's sort of like she was kind of like always there, and I can't remember when we first saw her, but her husband Lee Mullican was doing a bunch of ceramic work in our place, in our studio, and so Luchita would come in. Lee would kind of raid Luchita's kitchen for tools, and he had a very special style of working where he used like various odds and ends. Like he'd use like this miniature meat cleaver that Luchita had in the kitchen that he absconded with and brought it over to our studio. So he'd be like working away on pieces of clay with these little odds and ends. And Luchita would come in, and so I was just finally aware that, there was this amazing person entering through the doorway that, I don't know if that slideshow is running, you'll see there's a picture of her at some point. sitting in this chair, and it was these kind of, those pigskin chairs from Mexico that are kind of like pigskin and chunks of cedar that were all over the house in Arroyo Seco. And Lee had absconded with one of them too and brought it to the studio. So there's a photo of her sitting there with this straw hat in that chair, just looking as naturally there as, I mean, just kind of like she showed up and she was there, and it was almost like she'd always been there. You know, we just got this scarf, I guess, that was made, that Cole and the whole Hurtado estate sent out to a bunch of people, that was based on a painting that Luchita had made, like late in her life, of a few kind of like ethereal figures, all kind of looking like they were kind of flying through the cosmos. And below it, it says, "Together forever." And, you know, that's kind of like, yeah, you know. The one thing that Luchita was like incredibly devoted to her family. And after Lee passed away in 1998, after that it was always like, well, we'll be back together again. And so she's here.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Cynthia, I'm so glad you mentioned the house. This is their house in Arroyo Seco is something that was brought up repeatedly. It's hard to sort of separate from the stories that I've heard about her. It was a special place that was frequented by a lot of friends and family here. It was designed and built by Jean-Louis Bourgeois, the son of artist Louise Bourgeois, and constructed with traditional adobe techniques, which he was a master at. Are there any specific objects, details, or memories of her house in Taos that stand out to you as particularly meaningful? And how do you feel the space reflected her personality, values, or artistic spirit?
Their house. Well, it was a tall house. It's obvious.
Oh.
It's obvious. Is this working? Yeah. I mean, the windows looking at the mountain, you go out and look at the paintings, it's the same thing. You see her breasts, and they echo the peaks. And that house has this semicircular dining, kitchen, sleeping room, and there's the mountain, and it's in her work.
They had an amazing collection of Native American art that had a very strong presence in that house. You were just, you know, taken in by some of the power of that work that was in the house. There was always evidence of Lee's work, his paintings in the house. It seemed like lined up in this long hallway and probably hung out in the room Ron is talking about. Luchita's artwork wasn't in evidence except in the meals she served, in the way she hosted you in her house, showing you the flowers that they had in pots on the patio for the summer. That was very important, one of the first things they did. But I recall in the bedroom, there was a pencil drawing, as I recall it, and I'm going to have to say, you are hearing memories from 30, 40 years ago. So some of you may contradict things we say, and you may be right. But anyway, there was this pencil drawing of a mop, and I was very taken with it. And that was Luchita's. And up until the work came more public, that was the only thing I was aware of hers. Of course, she had her clothing that was her artwork. Her jewelry was her artwork, as Happy was talking about. She and I shared an appreciation of the Harvey jewelry that was made in shops in Albuquerque. Inexpensive jewelry that was made for tourists. And in honor of her today, I have some of mine on, because it would be up her arm, and bangles and necklaces and earrings. She just, radiated this style. But in the house, her work was not there, essentially, except in the kitchen and in her hosting and that aspect of the house, I think.
The jewelry thing in the bedroom, she had this, and the bedroom was great. It was, had a little wood-burning stove, but one of the great things there was this beautiful little dressing table with a bench and a big mirror. And that's what when I'd go in there with her, and she'd string up some beads, and she'd, put them around her neck and try it, because she was maybe going to a dinner that night, is usually how that worked. And then she had picked out these clothes, and she had, like, essentially, I never saw her ever buy a piece of clothing. She only wore this meshy kind of footwear that I guess she had to buy. And then she would string these necklaces to match whatever the item was that she put on. It was a ritual. It was a sort of doing a piece of art. It was always an artwork, and she always arrived looking gorgeous.
Hank, do you have any memories of the home?
Well, yeah, sure. The house, is this working? Yes. The house was remarkable because it was like two houses that were kind of joined by a little passageway. And when you came in, if you turned left, you'd go down some stairs, and there was this kind of round structure, kind of a rotunda, but it was like and it had a kitchen off of it, and then there was a giant fireplace, and then there was a wall that was just covered with these amazing things from all over the world, but especially from the Western United States, of various pieces of artwork that were just remarkable. Shields, there were masks, yeah, there were blankets or weavings that were kind of like done in the style of sand paintings. It was like walking into a museum, but it was not, it was homey. You didn't feel like you shouldn't be there. It was too remarkable for you. It just felt like it brought you in. And then there was that view right there to that, out those giant windows to that view. And then if you went the other way, you'd go into just a bedroom really, and kind of maybe a little bit of a studio space. And in there once, I saw one painting, miniature, not miniature, but certainly smaller than that painting on the wall there, that was one of those sky skin paintings where there were four mountains, one on each side, and they looked a little bit like a human body and a little bit like a landscape, and in the middle was a blue patch of sky. And it was just hanging very obscurely on a little wooden partition between the bedroom and the bathroom, kind of like you had to look to see it. You had to kind of like peek around the corner. And that is the only piece of artwork that I ever saw of Luchita's before she burst onto the scene globally. But, that layout was very remarkable because there was this very personal space and then this kind of public space where all this entertainment happened. And that was, to a lot of us, that was the artwork that Luchita did. That entertaining, these incredible meals for giant groups of people that were, I don't know where she gathered them, but they were all remarkable in their own way. And she used to say, the whole subject came up about why was the artwork hidden somewhere, which we don't know the answer to. But she would talk with Judy Kendall a lot, and unfortunately Judy can't be here today. But a lot of you knew her. She had a gallery here. She represented a number of artists, mostly women, but she never showed Luchita's work. And I don't know, in conversations, Luchita told Judy, she said, well, my life's my art.
Thank you. I believe Judy is actually on the live stream with us today, so she's kind of with us.
Well, hi, Judy. Hey.
It's incredible you mentioned that mop drawing. Luchita later in an interview with Hansel Rogobra said that was a self-portrait of herself, this drawing of a mop. Maybe we hold our mics up, would that help? Oh, sure.
Hank found a picture of a mop drawing in one of the books, and he showed it to me, and he said, well, here's the mop drawing. And I said, that's not the one I remember seeing.
Cole says there's 3.
There's 3. Okay, good. I'm glad, because that means I maybe haven't totally lost my mind about what I saw. Thank you.
Thank you, Cole. I think, we've started to touch on this, but Luchita's artistic career was not widely recognized for much of her life. Did she ever talk about working as an artist? And if so, what were her thoughts on her place in the art world? And really, I'm interested, since you are all artists, how do you relate to her experience of creating in relative obscurity for so long?
That, for me, is the big question. Because I never knew. I knew she was a painter in New York, and we talked all about that for a long time, and I had an inkling about what her work was about, but I never saw it. I never saw her work. I didn't realize she had a studio. It was so private that when this all happens around now, when everything's showing up, I'm astounded. I didn't know.
I think we all are. I don't think any of us knew.
These are these paintings in 1978 and the they're these big paintings, and I have no idea where or when or that she had done them or anything, and so I'm kind of really fascinated by this. So what is that about? It's a really strange thing, and we will never know.
The only thing I can think about it is that it was so personal to her and she wasn't ready to share it for whatever reasons.
Also, it's all self-portrait. She's the feathers, she's the leaf, she's the person in the picture with the feet and the breasts and the arms and the beautiful rug. I mean, it's all, everything you look at, except these later paintings along the hallway there, are pictures of Luchita. And Luchita and her shadow. Yeah. I'm starting to put that together. That shadow, she loved her shadow. And that shadow, she always said, was full of all the things and people she loved. And we would take these walks, and it was very important to her about where her shadow was and where it was going. But she put so much into those shadows. And there's a lot of pictures of her with her shadow.
Well, I just, when we got together a few days ago, and we were talking about this mystery about why is it that nobody in this little circle, and probably, I don't know if anybody out there, because a lot of you folks knew her too, but who knew that she was doing all this work? And she was creating this body of work for 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, and it was a secret, almost. I mean, there had been some opportunities to show the work in Los Angeles, like about 50 years ago, but we didn't know about that here so much. And so it's kind of like there is this, I think people have a fascination with people that have kind of a secret going on. You know, they're doing something, but they're usually keeping it a secret because they need to hide it. And Luchita was doing it not because she needed to hide it. Well, maybe she did. But usually when people are working on a secret project, it's kind of like they don't want people to know about it, and nobody should know about it because it's not good. But, you know, her project was so incredible and so remarkable that it created this sensation when it was finally revealed. And I guess that's the mystery that we're trying to crack here.
Ron, do you want to comment? As you know, we all keep touching on, Luchita was definitely known for her warmth, her hospitality, and her generosity. Do you have specific memories of her maybe hosting a meal or stories of any gifts she gave? Ron, I know you have a story about this to share. Do you want to start?
You know, Sandra had this huge birthday party for me, and there were 200 people, and Lee and Luchita showed up, and Sandra's in the kitchen stirring a big pot of polenta. Luchita pushes her out of the way, says, "Go get in the party, I'll do this." So, a very generous, just totally vivacious person, yeah.
You want to speak to the beautiful gifts she gave you?
Sure. Can we look at them? Oh, okay. Right. Lee and Luchita both had this knowledge of early Mexica, Mexican mythology and artwork. And I was beginning to work in Mexico making mezcal with farmers. And I'd ask about mythology, and we talked about, you know, some of the early gods were multi-use gods. You know, they covered a lot of territory, and they brought me this crystal, which she called Tlaloc's heart. Tlaloc is the god of water and rain, and so it's like this beautiful teardrop, and they also accompanied it with a slab of a rock. That's the back view. I later, like 10 years ago, I had this rock in a drawer for all these years from in the 90s, and you'll see the polished side, but that's the back side of the rock, and there's the front side, the cut and polished side, and it's like a mirror. Let's see. There was a god, Tezcatlipoca, and his adherents wore these polished stone mirrors you look into and you see your shadow side. So I took advantage of this rock and made that piece.
I really appreciate when I came to interview Ron to prep for the exhibition, he had this out, you know, sort of front and center in his studio. It was really special that you had that piece of her, you know, in a place where you worked and lived. It was really moving to see that. Happy, I know you spent a lot of time having lunches with Luchita and with Agnes. Would you share some of that?
Yes, we we did have a lot of lunches. And Agnes, there was no part of a chicken that she wouldn't eat. And so our lunches, and for any of you that just hate chicken livers, you might want to plug your ears. But so our lunches were chicken livers and a glass of wine. And she always had to have a sweet. So I would make tarts, and then she would wander out and leave. But we would do it either at my house. I used to feed Agnes often because she loved chicken, and I used to puree these soups. She always told me what she wanted. It wasn't as if I got to create anything. And then she would come and leave, and she'd call when she wanted to come a lunch again. But these Luchita lunches with the chicken livers on toast, we tried to change the recipe all the time. And the laughter, and even so you have their Luchita, just beautiful teeth, laughing, gorgeous. And then you have Agnes who sits there like that. And then every once in a while, she'll just blast out this beautiful smile and laugh, this sort of guttural laugh. And between all of us, it was just, all we did was laugh and talk. And Luchita was a great cook. She was an organic cook for sure. She ate all natural food. And in the house that was where she used to cook a lot of meals in Santa Monica, it was a 50 steps up to get to that house. Not easy steps either. They were rugged. And we would always go to the farmer's market on Wednesday and get all our vegetables and everything, but she always got this giant 50-pound bag of grapefruit. And we'd say, please, let us take that up for you. And she'd go, no. And she would climb up there, first with this big bag of all the 50, up to this little wooden house that they lived in. And then she always got a 50-pound bag of oranges. And this is every single week. And she did that for so many, many years. And her meals were beautiful. They were really fresh, and they were really clean. And she always did it in the most tiniest little kitchen, just tiny little kitchens with tiny ovens and sinks. Fridges were tiny. She worked in these spaces and brought out this enormous amount of beautiful food. And, you know, when we say Luchita was her art, her life was an art piece for sure. There was nothing that she did that didn't have some kind of a specialty to it. And food was one of her pleasures.
Hank and Cynthia, do you remember her hosting?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what everybody remembers. I mean, it was just like, it was this privilege and honor to be part of
Ron's hijacking.
part of this assemblage of people she brought together, and it was like a religious event almost to come there and have a meal and sit with all these remarkable people, and she would bring out that remarkableness in everybody. But you know, I think as far as and as a prelude to all that, I mean, when we first got to know Luchita, it was because Lee would be sitting in that little chair in the corner of our workshop, working away on stuff, and Luchita would come by, and she was on her way to the market. Every time she'd come into town, it was to procure food for these events that she would then put on. And so, you know, she was like constantly planning those things. You were asking about gifts, and you know, there is a photograph, I think, in this bunch that was playing here where you see a white, you know, 1970s kind of land yacht type of station wagon, because the Millicent Hurtado family they always had a white General Motors station wagon because they were going back and forth between Los Angeles and Taos, and then sometimes out to Oklahoma, and then sometimes beyond, even to New York City. And so everybody was, because there was a family, and everybody was piling into this station wagon, and then they were procuring all these remarkable things that would end up at their house. And when one of those white station wagons got a little old, then they'd go get a newer white station wagon. And they gave one to us one time. It was an Oldsmobile. Pretty nice. It was like, your dad's car kind of like. And we were driving that for a while. And then we gave it to this guy, Socorro, who worked for us, Jose Socorro. He was from Chihuahua. And he was always back and forth between the old family ranch in Chihuahua and Taos. And so we gave him the white Oldsmobile. And over the years, he would tell us about how many times it had been to Mexico and back and who was in it. It ended up, I think, at the rancho in Chihuahua, just kind of part of the landscape.
Well, the car for sure. And Lee worked in our studio, I don't know how many summers it would have been, but quite a few until he passed away. And he would, we never asked him for anything because he never really asked for anything. Hank would say, I can make you some special clay. I could, for what you're doing, maybe there should be a different formula. We can make it. Lee was, no. I only want what you already got. I don't want to be any trouble. But then our reward would be a painting. So that was lovely that he would do that. And Luchita's gift was just her. I mean, what greater gift couldn't you have than knowing someone like her? And, traveling with them sometimes to dances at Pueblos and stuff. And we'd go to Santo Domingo for that giant dance, stop for lunch in Santa Fe, and it'd be hot down there at the beginning of August. Hundreds of dancers and big crowds. And they'd go way at the end of the line, and they had their chairs. And Lee was such an impressive figure. He was very tall. And Luchita, obviously, with her presence and look, the clowns would always come over to them. And you'd be standing there watching this interaction that was just, just incredible to witness. So that's the gift, is knowing her.
All right, we have time for one more question, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. What does it mean to you to have Luchita return to Taos through this exhibition and series? How does it feel to reflect on her legacy here in the community she was part of? Big question.
It's remarkable that this whole convocation that we have here right now and all of the attention that's been paid to the work, it's something so unfathomable, really, because like I keep saying, nobody knew this was going on. And yet, it was this incredible gift that was bestowed that ended up back here, and focusing back attention to who we are and what we do and where we are. It's just kind of like dropped in from somewhere, but it was here all along. I don't know what else to say.
I think, the one thing with the opening here this summer, and then there was a dinner that was put on, and it was an opportunity to get to know and kind of, we had met John and Matt, and I believe Matt's wife and John's husband, but it was an opportunity to spend more time with them. It's like she gave us this opportunity through her artwork to get to know her family better. And I think one thing we haven't talked about is her 2 grandchildren and what they meant to her. I mean, that was just major, major event in her life to have those 2 grandchildren. And I can remember when Cosmo was born, it was like, he's Lee. And when Lucy was born, that was Luchita. And it's very evident.
Yeah, that was the thing, because she never thought she'd have grandchildren, and I think that really is basically one of the only things that brought her great sadness. And then weren't they twins? They're twins. No? Yeah. They were twins, and then all of a sudden she had 2. And it just made her, it was her life. And then Lucy, the beautiful Lucy, who's a known artist now in New York, took care of her the last few years of her life. And I think for Lucy, that was a complete joy. And it was so touching when she would talk about Luchita. The question is, however, okay, so this has been a wonderful treat for me, because, you know, as you get older, you kind of try and figure out things that you can do to keep your mind at least working. And so bringing Luchita back into my mind has really been a wonderful experience, in thinking about all the things, and I feel so blessed to have known her.
Yeah, that's a really good point. This event, all the events here, bringing that past back to the present has been a gift. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining us. I think we're going to turn it over to Q&A in the audience. I think Gwen has a microphone. If anyone wants to ask a question, you can go ahead and raise your hand.
So I really don't have a question, because it's one of the sky and skin paintings. And I have had it hanging. I live in Santa Fe now, and I love that painting because coming back and forth from New Mexico and eventually moving here 35 years ago, that painting evoked New Mexico to me. But I could never find out anything about it. And it's, you know, I would look, it's signed Luchita Hurtado, it's from 1979, and I could never find anybody who had ever heard of her. I would ask galleries in Taos and in Santa Fe, nobody ever heard of her. And so, you know, I just thought, well, maybe it was a IAIA student or something. I had no idea where it came from. But I've always loved that painting, and I still love it. And so I had no idea until I read an article in the Santa Fe New Mexican about this exhibit.
That's incredible. Cole Root from the estate might want to talk to you about that.
So anyway, thank you for solving this 40-year mystery of this artwork that I love, that I couldn't imagine that this wonderful artist didn't
Thank you for
exist
sharing that.
anymore.
That's incredible.
Right? And you know, like I said, I've lived in Santa Fe full time since '93. I lived there since '89, and I'm just very sorry that she was here, and I never could find her. So, anyway, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, it won't go on the live stream if you don't. Oh, right. Okay, never mind. Go ahead. I'm not sure I remember that from last week's discussion.
Luchita had two different studios from different periods in Santa Monica Canyon. But, for one, there's actually a picture from the flyer for this. Was in one of her studios, and Matt took that photo. So, they didn't know about it.
So the kids didn't know about the Santa Monica studio, is that? Yeah. No, they did know. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not sure. Sorry. But I know Claire Motzinger, who did that panel last week, is here, and she might be able to help you out later.
I think the comment you might be remembering is a comment about one of the children seeing a painting that they hadn't seen before. That was quite startling, and it was one of her body works. That was a little bit surprising. I think Maya was talking about that moment. So it wasn't necessarily that they hadn't been in the studio, but they hadn't necessarily seen that specific painting. I believe that was the comment.
No worries. Any last questions before we wrap up? Oh, there's one in the front.
I just wanted to think about in the early 70s when she was painting and she was part of the Women's House. And perhaps because it was perhaps feminist in nature, she might not have felt that she had the response that was necessary to make her continue. It's just a thought. And also perhaps Jewish Chicago might know something about that. And has anyone discussed it with Judy?
I might turn this one back to you again, Cole, but as far as she definitely seemed to find power in her voice and identify with these political issues from what I've read from her interviews. But Cole, do you want to add to that?
But prior to 2017, the one solo show she had ever had was at the Women's Building in Los Angeles. Yeah, what you were saying is very true. From the response of it, we knew or have all of the paintings except for one from that show. So nobody ever bought them. Also, she did two prints with Tamarind Workshop in 1970, and they were advertised in the Women's Space magazine as fundraisers, and we have every single edition. No one ever bought one of them. But Judy Chicago also did co-curate the show. I think it was in 1976 or something like that in Long Beach, and that was one of the only group shows we know that Luchita was in.
So you're kind of right.
I studied with Melinda Wirtz at UC Irvine, so she was very much involved in her research.
Did Luchita ever self-identify as a feminist to y'all?
I'm sorry.
Did Luchita ever self-identify as a feminist to you in conversations?
No, but she did always do the Sunday news, and she always read the New York Times. She was always very up on everything that was going on, but I never, no, actually, no.
All right, maybe we have one more question?
Well, it's wonderful to bring Luchita back to New Mexico, and also the fact that she wasn't known is phenomenal. But what's next for Luchita? And I know this might be another question that goes back to Cole, but
there is a solo exhibition in Los Angeles being planned for this year. The dates are kind of still up in the air, but we'll be revisiting a body work that's not featured in the show here at Harwood. It's going to be the same work that I mentioned from 1973 from her one solo show that she had prior to the 20-teens, her linear text work. And then also she's going to be in a major exhibition at a New York institution. It's one piece in the group show. I don't know
While Cole is the microphone, should we wrap this up? Cole, do you want to tell them about the project you guys have going on right now to support the fires in Los Angeles?
Yeah, so we're working with, I think about 30 artists in Los Angeles and all over are working with an organization called Grief and Hope that started by some gallery people in LA, and Andrea Bowers is involved, and it's an open edition print, and we have it on our Instagram and stuff like that, where you can go to Grief and Hope, find them. But we have a print of Lee's work and of Luchita's. They're $100 with all the proceeds going to wildfire relief in Los Angeles. Also, starting in the spring of this year, probably late March, we're going to start in our space in Los Angeles. We have a warehouse, a little far out of LA, where we store all the archives and Luchita's library and clothes and all the artwork for the Luchita. We're going to start having an exhibition program where we're inviting living artists in LA to come in and respond to our archives and install their work, and then curate a wall of Lee or Luchita's work.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate it. I know our panelists will be around for a little bit. If you have any questions you want to ask them directly, let's give them a round of applause.